I debated whether I was going to do this on the live, and I ultimately resigned that there's no point doing it live. There's nothing really to show. Most of the information is already well known. You already know it to be the truth because you see it yourself. So there's not really a reason for me to show anything because chances are, right, there's two sets of people that are watching this video. There are the people that are still in Saitama, and there are people that got out and are just curious. LSG 2002. Regardless, there's those populations. And I am not here to do what others I see are doing, which is that they're basically just making a statement. And the statements, there's nothing wrong with the statement, but I'm presenting it differently. I'm looking at it from a different lens. And I think what's lost in this whole Saitama business with V2 is a refusal to hold them accountable to statements that were made, because fundamentally it's the only issue I have with them and have always had with them since the failed Vegas event November 13, 2021 was a failure to make factual statements and deliver on what was promised. And unfortunately, many in the community, aka the Russ We Trust cult, follow along with the statements, and regardless of them being called out saying it's not healthy for you to have a cult mentality and you need to hold them accountable when they keep failing, they still held the line. I respect anybody that holds the line in loyalty to a project they truly believe in, but I have more respect when there's fundamental reason why you do so. Outside of just this guy who puts his hands under his chin and talks to you is telling you things that sound good that hopefully will make you rich one day, because I have referred to the so-called wolf pack as a cult at times because they come across like a cult, and in many cases we're proud to do so, to the point that then some of them apparently go and spin up this cult DAO garbage. Here we are, V2, and you see the thumbnail. So you can't say I'm making anything up. You can go to Twitter yourself and find it yourself. These are not made up things. These are not made up statements. It's simply, I'm in my quarterly state of Saitama, because at this point I can do a quarterly and nothing has significantly changed other than fancy brand messaging. Where we are right now is you are allegedly getting V2 tokens airdropped to you, and leading up to, I said, I'm not a fan of airdrops and migrations because they never seem to go well. Nobody wants to come back, give my credit, because here we are again where there's a subset of people who have not gotten airdrops. That's fine. It happens. When you choose that, you choose to ignore Leicester, you do the airdrop, it's going to F up. Okay. But then the downside is that there's still this messaging that's faulty messaging coming out of the devs in that team, where they don't seem to understand that you should not be putting out statements that make promises you know you can't keep. When I did the coverage about the migration plan, I called out a number of points I felt were going to be risks I think were going to fail, and here we are having seen them fail. No, I have not gotten V2 airdrop tokens. I don't have a lot of them because I only had it from mining. I didn't pay any money for any of them, but it was enough over the threshold that they called out in the initial document. So I expected to see that so that I could watch and hopefully hold them accountable to their plan. Now, they've already cheated on the plan. They said in their document, it's in their PowerPoint, they were not going to enable trading until the second pass. That didn't happen. They turned on trading from square one, which unfortunately, because of the way they did the migration, they started with the largest wallets working backwards. FYI, if you start with the largest wallets working backwards, you're either making the assumption that those wallets are not going to dump on you, and what happened? They dumped on you, or you're trying to enrich devs, you're trying to do something that helps the wealthy at the expense of the low-level investor. I don't know why that made any sense, and if you go back to a video I did on YouTube, as well as a shortcut that I did on YouTube and Twitter, I said, I'm not sure why it made sense to start the trading. Come to find out, and it makes sense, but it was not part of their documentation, thus they didn't tell you, thus you couldn't plan for it. Apparently, and I have not directly proven, but I see statements to this and evidence that supports it, at least partially. Apparently, the logic behind starting trading was to leverage the collected taxes to pay for the airdrops, which would support the reasoning why we would have seen points where the airdrops appeared not to be moving. Now, here's the thing. If they decided to use the taxes to pay for the airdrops, that means they expected you to dump. That means they expected sales. They might have accepted buys, but I'm pretty sure the sale tax is a little bit higher. So they expected sells. They were trying to use it as a penalty to support the airdrops and other people. Okay, I would have preferred you simply communicate that to the people so they understand what your strategy was, because that would have done what? That would have discouraged people from dumping, except those that didn't want to be in the project anyway, and you do want to tax them, but at least you tell them in advance you're going to tax them. However, the mantra has always been, the devs are paying for this out of pocket. Out of the goodness of their hearts, they're paying for this out of pocket. If it's factually true per the data I see that you were using the taxes to support the airdrops, that means the devs aren't paying for jack. Now, they might have paid for the initial. They might have paid for a partial. I need to make sure people understand that the clarity and accuracy of statements made when you're trying to act like a business is actually very important and might actually support why SAITAMA LLC left the United States, because by law, you cannot make those kinds of statements that are misleading or misrepresentative to investors, which you are, because there's fiat involved and you expect an ROI. My summary on this, again, I've not received any V2 tokens at this point. The holder count is just shy of 120,000 as I last looked at it. Of course, at its peak, it was well over 300,000. There was a theory running around and pretty strong evidence to support it that many of those wallets were simply dust wallets and not worth the true holder count that was suspected. However, being over 100,000 is not bad. It's better than many tokens, so it's actually a good holder count. The challenge is that, again, we see example after example after example where the dev team sucks at communication, starting from the moment they announced the airdrop, per my thumbnail, where they said, as of a month ago, this will take, quote, a few days, or I do encourage you to check out, just for entertainment purposes if nothing else, the various videos that Believes went through on his channel, calling out the day X of 1 or 2 days, all of these statements that are made that they don't back up. And they seem not to click to stop making those statements, because they still make those statements even in the current. And it seems like many in the wolf pack have cooled down a very little bit, and some of the influencers understand that their reputations go in the crapper when you support projects that can't back up what they claim. I'm not wishing them ill. As I've done every single quarterly, I wish they would get smarter about communication or hire somebody who can do it better than they can, because there are a lot of people who can communicate better than they can, and it's very easy. Tell the truth and not mislead. Don't overpromise. Don't overhype. You know there's things outside of your control, so don't make statements as they are fact for things not within your control. Why is that so hard for you? Because you know that if you don't do the hype, the price won't move upward. It'll move downward. Sometimes you have to accept the downward movement and just take it on the chin that maybe you weren't as good as you thought you were, especially because you already made broken promises and you damaged investor reputation. The way you rebuild that, you've got to get better. And I said it before. There was nothing wrong with the V1 contract. There was nothing wrong with the project. There's nothing wrong with the token. It's all about the people. It always has. And I've said it before. Success can only come when you change the people. Same with the car salesman with Seifu. It's the people. It's not the token. It's not the project. There's nothing wrong with the token in some form. It's like an abused child. The child is being abused by those that are its guardian and its custodian. I personally find that offensive. I know that other people are okay with it because they're sold on the hype, because they want to be rich. We're long past that, folks, especially in a bear market, by the way. I think it's time to start requiring fundamentals of these projects. We're already too late. They've already started the airdrop process, but lessons learned, you should have used Evermigrate. I understand the convenience for the user, but as you've seen, sometimes when you're not competent enough to do it that way, and many tokens aren't, I'm not targeting you specifically, I'm saying the competency to do an airdrop one is not known yet. Nobody's perfected that. But Ever Migrate has worked extremely well every time it's been done. That's what you should have done. The problem, likely, is you didn't have the money to pay for it. It's my guess. Okay, you could have done it in chunks. You could have done it in segments. You could have done it partial over time. There were ways around this. Maybe drop some of the lofty garbage that doesn't do you any good right now and focus on the core token, which I called out in my Q1 quarterly SAITAMA update. A lack of focus, too much sprawl, you spread too thin, you spent too much money, you burned too much money, no pun intended, instead of focusing on the core token and getting it to base fundamentals, which would have helped you make smarter decisions because you're not just reacting to a thing that we got to spin up all these shinies. And I've said that to numerous tokens. I'm not picking on you. I'm calling you out because you communicate worse than they do, arguably. At least you communicate, you just suck at it. No, I can help you if you want that smoke. Now, the SAITAMA team has gone on various platforms. Unfortunately, they go on the platforms that softball them. That harms them, I think, because nobody's ever challenged them. They've gone on AMAs where they've asked answered a couple questions here and there, and they've somewhat kind of sort of wink, wink admitted that they could do things better. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking on the chin hard questions that they've never been asked before so that we can understand what's really going wrong. As we suspect, is it truly the COO, the cult leader, that's the core of the problem? Or was it Max who left? And will we truly see things better? And when are we going to see things better? And why are we making these poor decisions? And no, it's not acceptable to say, well, we're learning, we're getting better. No, you can't keep failing and say that you're learning. That's a contradiction. Something's going wrong. And so far, we haven't seen significant progress forward. The only commonality left is the cult leader at the top. So maybe, as I said to Seifu, maybe for the good of the investors, maybe it's time to shift the leadership all the way around, not just one person walking out. I'm talking all the way around. You flush it out and get some new heads in there to try to do it correct. And numerous in the community have offered resources to help you do it, and you're not taking it. Now you get into ego problems, and that's an issue because you're not serving the investors. If you want it to thrive and you care and give a damn, then make smarter decisions. Listen, if you want that smoke, I'm happy to help you because ultimately I don't want to see people get ripped off. Even if it's not malicious, even through gross incompetence or negligence, I don't want to see it because there's no reason to see it. There's no reason for it. We can do better, but you got to come down off it. Welcome the smoke. Chat with me, and I'll hit you with those questions nobody's asked you. And I will expect answers that so far I haven't heard as to what really went wrong. And why is it that it keeps going wrong? And at what point are we going to fix these things? And if you don't believe in my ability to ask key questions, we have coverages that we've done before, and you can listen to them. I'm willing to help you if you want that smoke. Because right now, V2 might succeed long term. But in the short term, you're just upsetting people because things keep getting jacked up. And worse, you're making statements over and over again, and you fail to deliver per the statements. At some point, failure, you've already lost the reputation, and you can't get it back.